How did you get interested in golf? Why did you start caddying? Why did you stop playing in your 20s? When were you your best as a golfer? And did you practice much, or was it pure athletic ability? My interest in golf undoubtedly started from caddying and watching the game being played in person. I started caddying at age 12 at Laval-sur-le-Lac Golf Club, an exclusive course near our country home in Plage Laval. The members were primarily French, and I was one of the very few English caddies. I learned to speak patois and several French swear words to survive. We were allowed to use the range on Monday mornings, and the pro, Jules Louot, often came and spent some time with us. To make a buck, you always carried the bags of 2 golfers. The starting rate was a paltry 75 cents per bag for 18 holes, so you counted heavily on tips. You learned who the good tippers were, and also the skinflints who you tried to avoid by being buddy-buddy with the caddy master. I finally had one golfer ask if I wanted to be his regular weekend caddy, and I took the job that paid well in those days. He was a vice president at Dupuis Frères, a French department store on St. Catherine Street and St. Denis in Montreal. He was also the Spanish ambassador to Canada. I was sitting around the Roxy restaurant in Plage one day with a bunch of guys when the caddy master, Paul Tugas, came down from the club looking for English caddies for a tournament that week. I purposefully didn't go up that week because I'd heard it was a ladies' event and they were known as poor tippers. He said he'd give me a young lady about my age who was the Ontario ladies' champion. I told him no, because she wouldn't pay well. Instead, he offered someone who turned out to be the wife of the owner of the Winnipeg Free Press, who I agreed to take, thinking her husband would probably pay me. It was match play, but she was eliminated after 2 rounds. Turns out the young lady from Ontario was Marlene Stewart-Strite, who ended up winning both the Canadian Women's Open and closed tournament that year. Her caddy barely spoke a word of English. Don't know how much he earned. We used to sneak onto the course to play a few holes near the highway, and were often chased off by the greenkeeper, a real game of cat and mouse. I played some golf at the Clanranald Public Golf Course in Snowdon before joining the private Hampstead Golf Course as a junior. Most nights after work, I cycled to the course to practice. You had to use your own shag bag of balls on the range and pick them all up when you're finished. I had a partial set of Crow Flight clubs that my Uncle Fred from Australia bought for me. The club was really great in trying to develop young golfers, and the pro, Buddy Clark, was also encouraging. I practiced a lot back then, and as a result, played my best golf then. In the summer months after I started dating Baba, I would play on Saturday morning and meet her after the game, and together we took the train to Plage Laval, our summer home. On the way, I would tell her what I shot, hole by hole, and my score. I only learned several years later how boring that was for her. We moved to Rosemere in 1961, so I had to drive into Montreal to play at the golf course on Saturday and Sunday, leaving Baba alone with Ronnie. In September 1962, I was backing out of our driveway and heard a loud bang from the rear tire. Turns out I had a flat as a golf tee had somehow punctured the tire. Needless to say, I missed my tee time that morning. That was probably an omen telling me to stop playing the game, especially since Baba was expecting to bring Linda into this world sometime in October. I gave up my membership that year and didn't play regularly again until we moved to St. John's in 1978, where we joined Bally Haley. After some 16 years, it was like starting all over again, and I admit, very frustrating, as my game was never the same, one of the reasons being that there was no decent practice facility at the club. Not sure about playing golf this year with the Duffers, as the neuropathy in my legs and feet makes walking and maintaining my balance very difficult. Going to try my first game in early May, so I'll see. Update: I was able to play some games. Pictured, my first set of golf clubs and snappy hat. Have you ever won anything? First, I must confess that I have never been on a team that won a Stanley Cup, World Series, or Grey Cup, nor a Masters green jacket. However, what I did win was nevertheless a big deal to me. My earliest trophies go back to the annual regatta in Plage Laval, winning swimming and canoe races in my younger days. One interesting canoe race was called a gunnel race, where you stood on one end of the canoe and propelled the boat forward by moving up and down at the back of the canoe. All too easy to fall off. Winning the provincial shot put competition at Molson Stadium by setting a new record was also a big deal, although I must confess that my cousin, who was a gym teacher, was the judge at that event. Football was a really big deal at West Hill High, where I attended, and winning the city championship, both on our junior team and later on the senior team, was important to me at the time. A year after I joined Molson's, as a single male, I was invited to party at John Molson's summer home in Saint-Sauveur. I'm proud to say that, along with our company nurse, we won the famous Mole Pool Trophy, presented annually for the Heavyweight Seahorse Wrestling Championship, besting a player with the Montreal Alouettes, Joey Powell. I still have the trophy, which was a hand-carved statue. Narrator's note, look at that back. Good gravy. I remember being on a team that won the Men's Curling Club Championship at Ballyhaley and St. John's. We played on a Saturday morning and celebrated our win with a few beers after. Then learning that our skip went home, told his wife their marriage was finished, took some clothes, and walked out. No hint of this during our game that morning. I won a sweater at the Caddies Golf Tournament at the Laval-sur-le-Lac Club, shooting a magnificent 119. I learned that the winners all cheated like hell. I have never won anything of significance at any raffle that I have entered. I'm convinced that if there were only 2 names in the hat, that mine would not be the one pulled out. I have also tried my luck at the casino during our various cruises, but again, without any real success. In fact, Baba has won a few times gambling, and one time at a casino in Monte Carlo, she came out a winner. We also spent a few dollars at the Flamborough racetrack that we went to go with our gourmet group, and again, came away without winning a buck. I still buy lottery tickets with the faint hope of winning, and regularly buy a $100 ticket for the Princess Margaret Hospital draw with the hope of winning, but knowing it's mainly a contribution to that hospital. Why did you collect beer steins? Which was the first one? Which are your favorites? I started collecting beer steins shortly after joining Molson's. It seemed like the natural thing to do. The first one I recall buying had a large face in front with a music box in the base that played a tune every time you lifted it up to take a swig. I also had a yard of ale stein, which was attached to a wooden stand that could be used by the pub owner to pass up the beer to someone riding a coach. Schultz and Dooley steins were also 2 of my favorites that were characters on an American commercial for a beer called Utica Club. One from the Husky Tower, now called the Calgary Tower, is one of several from cities in Canada. A pair of Molson's 175-year anniversary are collector items. Beer steins with lids from Germany and Britain were also collected. The last one I recall buying celebrated the arrival of the tall ships in 1984 as they slowly moved up the St. Lawrence River. We saw them while visiting Quebec City, where Susan was going to spend a month in a French immersion program to enhance her knowledge of the language. Unfortunately, there was virtually no wind that day, so the huge sails remained quite limp, and the ships were forced to use their engines to move along. I don't know exactly how many I had, but it was fun collecting them over the years. Narrator's note, the musical stein kinda scared the bejesus out of me for a while, but I got over it. Did you have favorite things to do with each of your kids? Reading, sports, chores? I can't say that I had any favorite things that I wanted to do with Ronnie, Linda, or Sue. Certainly reading stories wasn't something I did much of with any of our children. What I do remember about reading to each of them was in Rosemere sitting on the edge of the bathtub and reading stories, particularly Grimm's fairy tales and Dr. Seuss, hoping they would perform while sitting on the toilet. Somehow the stories served as a mild laxative. I suppose because I loved sports, I spent time coaching Ronnie in some of the sports he was involved with. This included soccer, baseball, and hockey. He only played hockey outdoors, which meant putting on his equipment and skates and those of other kids whose parents just dropped them at the rink. It was bloody cold some mornings standing by the rink trying to keep the right number of kids on the ice at any one time. Frozen toes were a common ailment back then. He also used to go up north with Susan to ski, which I didn't do, so I sat inside waiting for the day to finish. I don't recall doing anything special that I did with Linda until she was older and started doing Highland dancing. With Baba, we went to watch her perform/compete in church basements and outdoors. I remember not being able to go into any toilet without someone playing their very noisy bagpipes. I was happy when Linda tried curling in Rosemere for a while, and one of her teachers, Chris Morgan, thought she was doing really well at it. Several years later, Linda has really gotten into curling in St. Catharines, along with hubby John. Susan got involved with the Rosemere swim team, and we used to go to various meets, mainly at clubs on the lakeshore. She also skied up north with a group from the curling club, which I think Linda shied away from because it was too damn cold to ski all day. I really liked camping with all 3 children, except for the sleeping accommodations and lack of bathroom facilities. Some of the campsites were particularly great for all 3 kids, and they were lucky enough to meet other kids they had a good time with. We had a hardtop camper trailer where Linda and Sue slept on one wing, Ronnie the other wing, and Baba and I slept on a padded table. I loved seeing them leave our campsite after breakfast, come home for lunch, then go again until supper time. Our last camping outing was in Terra Nova in Newfoundland in 1979. Linda slept in a tent, not the camper, with an exchange student, but around midnight the winds picked up, bending the surrounding birch trees, so she and the exchange student decided they would leave the tent and sleep in the camper. We sold the camper that summer for roughly what we paid for it. It seems like many, many moons ago that we did things with our 3 kids. What is one of the dumbest things you've ever done? What would you change about it? Susan reminded me that I have done a lot of dumb things in my life, so it's not easy to pick the dumbest one. I do remember going to our country house in Plage Laval over the 24th of May holiday weekend. The year before, our next-door neighbor, Alec Dixon, had built a very small sailboat using a dory-shaped rowboat. He sawed about 3 feet off one end, making it flat, then filling that end in so it wouldn't sink. He then attached a tiller, which allowed him to steer his homemade sailboat. I put the sawed-off end in our backyard and thought someday I'll make a toy boat. That spring, 24th weekend, I decided to make a fun little boat. I used some extra roofing shingles my dad had put in the crawl space under our house and some roofing nails to fasten the shingles to the back of my makeshift boat. I put my boat on a wagon I had and headed down to our baby beach where I launched the boat. Much to my surprise and disappointment, the boat leaked like a sieve and it sank. I was about 25 feet from shore and, of course, all my clothes were soaking wet and the water was freezing cold. When I got home, my mother wanted to know what happened to me. I told her some big guy had pushed me into the water without any warning. I described the mythical guy to her, and with that she took off to find him. When she got home, she said he had disappeared and was nowhere in sight. She was livid. As to what I would do different, I would like to think I would tell the truth about what actually happened to me and not make up a story. What games did you play when you were young? Which was your favorite, and what were you best at? Like a lot of kids, I played several games including indoor and outdoor games, card games and board games, sports and non-sports. I played several card games, including regular and round-the-clock solitaire, high card, crazy eights, Romoli, and as I got older, cribbage and blackout. My favorite 2 games were round-the-clock solitaire and blackout, a form of basic bridge involving trumps and bidding, which I was pretty good at. Highly popular growing up was the yo-yo, bolo bat, and the diddle. I wasn't great at any of these, but I did like trying to win various badges by doing certain tricks when their representatives visited our street to promote the use and purchase of these items. Other than bronze, silver, and gold badges, you got new strings for the yo-yo, and new elastic strings for the bolo bat just for participating. I played several board games, probably still played today, including Chinese checkers, regular checkers, snakes and ladders, Monopoly, and crokinole. I was strictly banned from playing darts because of something I did. A street bully named Tom Kelly was teasing some of us as we played hopscotch on the street. I went into our house and brought out a dart that we had there. As he started to walk away from us, I threw the dart at him and it stuck in the back of his neck. He started crying and rang our doorbell to tell my mother. She removed the dart and put a bandage on the wound and he left. I was royally spanked by my mother, but I wonder if deep down she didn't really regret what happened. He never did bother any of us after that incident. Narrator's note, deserved! I played several games outdoors, including Between the Bases, which wore out the front lawns of our duplexes, hopscotch, and tried but failed doing double Dutch skipping on the street. Our street, Duluth, was our outdoor playground, and we were rarely bothered by cars or delivery trucks back then. Our problem was the horse-drawn carts, used by the milkman, breadman, fruit and vegetable man, etc., and the leavings on the street by the horses. Our street was loaded with boys and girls all around the same age. We used it to play ball hockey, touch football, and baseball. In fact, a kid named Omer Letourneau painted a baseball diamond on the street, including a home plate and the 3 bases, which we used all the time. As a sideline to Omer, his father owned a new taxi, which he parked on the street. For whatever reason, there was some gasoline under the car. An older guy named Sidney Kastner was going to show us that he could throw a lighted match into the leaking gasoline and it would go out. Well, it didn't, and the car caught fire, bringing the fire department to Duluth to get it out. Don't know whatever happened to Sidney as a result. On the weekend, several fathers on the street would get involved with our various sports, and it took Mr. Boyle to launch a wonderful football kick right through the upstairs window of one of his neighbors, which we all thought was hilarious. We played a lot of ball hockey on the street. In fact, we built nets made out of 2x4 wood and chicken wire that were very heavy. Our engineering wasn't great, and it fell on one of the guys hurting his back. In the winter, quite often the street was icy, so we donned our skates and played hockey on our local rink. Also, our downstairs neighbor, Mr. Findlay, built a small skating rink in the field behind our house, which was fun to skate on this postage-sized rink. I tried skiing on 2 small hills, one we called Rhubarb Hill, don't know why, and the other was Farmer's Hill at the top of Côte Saint-Luc beside the fire station. Never was really very good at it. I have to say that my favorite outdoor game was definitely hockey. Saturday mornings was shinny hockey at Ponsard Park. Unfortunately, if it snowed, we had to clear the ice ourselves with plows and shovels before we could use it. A few times, a Boston Bruins player named Fleming McKell, who lived near the park, would join us, and too often body check us away from the puck. But we loved that a pro hockey player lightly body checked us and stuck around to play for a while. In the summer at our country home, I played a lot of mini golf on a course I made around our house. I dug 4 holes at each corner of the house and put in an empty tin can. I would purposefully mow a fairway for each hole and leave part of the grass longer as the rough. My dad enjoyed playing that golf with me. Also played croquet quite often and badminton. Some weekends I'd go over to my mother's friend's house to play badminton with our son-in-law Alan Fitzpatrick. He was an outstanding soccer player and a provincial champion badminton player. Unfortunately, he had to stop competing at badminton when he lost his eye. He apparently went to get the bird near the net, and as he ran forward, he stepped on his racket, broke it, and fell with the broken end piercing his eye. Ugh. He ended up with an artificial glass eye. As a teen, about 15 or 16, I played for a softball team in our area of Plage, where the rest of the team were in their 20s. It was sponsored by Joe's Steakhouse, a restaurant in Montreal. A son of the restaurant owner and a neighbor of ours owned this restaurant. What I still remember and feel today was the sweater was more of a woolen fabric rather than cotton or nylon, and especially when you perspired, it itched like crazy. I did try playing chess, bowling, pool, and one year the violin, because the lessons were free at school, but wasn't very good at any of them. I hated having to carry the violin and case to and from school, feeling like a real sissy. I always preferred games that were played outside, and while my friends might be indoors reading or learning to play the piano, I was outside, rain or shine, throwing a ball against the wall and catching it or shooting a puck at our front stairs and naturally putting it through the door window of our downstairs neighbors, the Findlays. And yes, I had to pay to have it replaced. Of course, there was no such thing as online games, where you could play alone or against an opponent. I never heard that kind of thing could be possible. How wrong I was.